Today we're going a little bit off the beaten path back to 1989 to review Pretty Boy Floyd, Leather Boyz with Electric Toyz. Let's go! Alright guys, how does one even begin to explain their first exposure to the band Pretty Boy Floyd?
Leather Boyz with Electric Toyz. That describes Pretty Boy Floyd.
Let me just say that I purchased this album for two reasons and two reasons only. One, the absolute awesome cover that is reminiscent of the Ken Kelly covers that he did for Kiss with Destroyer and Love Gun. To me, the band looked exactly like the rockers were supposed to look, which is Bondage Women? I don't know. But back then, that was exactly the look. And the other reason was I noticed that there was a song on this album called Toast of the Town. Now, that was something that caught my interest because being a huge Motley Crue fan, I knew that Motley Crue had a song called Toast of the Town. But it was a song that I, at that point, had never even heard. Before the internet and before music sharing and all of that stuff, the only way to hear that song was to have one of the original 45s that they used to throw out at their concerts in LA back in 1981. So I wasn't even sure it was the same song when I bought the album, but I was hopeful that it was going to be a cover of that song. So I want to be clear, especially as a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid that was into the hard rock, I needed my rock stars to look like rock stars. I don't want some guy in blue jeans and a t-shirt that looks like everybody else that I know. That's not who I'm looking up to as, the impressionable youth that they were trying to reach. So the image, once again, very, very important. It doesn't matter that looking back now, maybe those weren't the best choices, but at the time, it was a heavily contributing factor to my need to pick this album up. Okay, so not a big surprise here. Their best song on the album ends up being a cover tune. Toast of the Town, I think, is the best song on this album. And not just because, yes, it ended up being a cover song of Motley Crue's famous single that I had never heard. Even hearing it the first time, I wasn't instantly sure, but their singer sounds so much like early Vince Neil throughout the whole album, really, that there was very, very little doubt in my mind. And of course, there was no Google or internet to go to check that out. I just assumed that, yes, that was in fact the song. And to be honest with you, it's a pretty faithful rendition of the Motley version. And I would later find out that the guys in Pretty Boy Floyd were like huge Motley Crue fans. I think they even thanked them on their liner notes just for being Motley Crue, and inspiring them. So Toast of the Town, not only a cool song, best song on the album in my view. All right, so the worst song, and you're rarely going to see me put a ballad in the spot of a worst song because I'm kind of fond of those, to be quite honest, but the song Wild Angels is just a ballad that never takes off, to be quite honest with you. I think that the late release of this album, 1989, when the formula for successful hair metal bands had already kind of changed, that, by 1989, when this album came out, they, in my view, tried to put too many ballads on it. It just didn't work, and Wild Angels probably falls down all the way to the bottom as the worst song on the album. And as we go on with the review, you will see that that's really saying something. Okay, so the most overrated song on this album is Set the Night on Fire. And I say that almost with a question mark at the end. It's really hard to have an overrated song on an album that didn't really garner much attention or much success. But and I like the song just fine. For me, it's one of the top 4 songs on the album. But of all the Pretty Boy Floyd early songs that someone might be aware of, I think that Set the Night on Fire is probably going to be the one that is the most overrated. All right, so the biggest good surprise on this album for me is the opening and title track, Leather Boyz with Electric Toyz. It sounds a little cheesy. I guess the title is a little cheesy. I'll give you that. But it really is an all-out rock anthem that I think had it come out a few years earlier, certainly would have benefited the song and kind of catapulted it a bit. They come out really, really strong and fast and aggressive in the song, and it's got that cool sing-along vibe to it. Vince Neil-esque sounding vocals in a good way, not Vince Neil like now. I really do feel like this band was just a few years too late for what they were trying to do. They're a pretty good carbon copy ripoff sound-wise of what Motley Crue was doing in the early years. It's just by the time they got around to getting signed and their album coming out, I think that, interest in that kind of music had kind of waned significantly. But all that being said, Leather Boyz with Electric Toyz really is a fun beginning to end song that you can pump your fist to and tap your foot to and really get into it. All right, so the biggest letdown on this album is I Want to Be With You. It's not surprisingly by the title, that is another one of the many ballads that they tried to put on this album. And the reason I give it a letdown is while the song itself still gets kind of I think a fairly respectable 7 in my book now, when I was growing up, I seem to remember thinking that this was like a really, really great power ballad, amongst all the other power ballads. And really, it just falls a little bit flat. It's not as bad as Wild Angels as far as just never going anywhere. The song definitely tells a story and definitely has has the right vibe to it. It's just a letdown because it just wasn't near as good as I remembered it being. Yeah, all right, guys. So when it comes time to rank it, it's gonna be difficult for me to justify a ranking really any higher than 4 on this one. I mean, it's an adequate rock album. Certainly has its shining moments, but like I kind of alluded to earlier, I think this album came out 3 or 4 years too late. It's a bit juvenile in its approach to the songs and the messages and stuff. And, you really don't realize the difference in the mindset, I think, between a 12-year-old and a 14 or 15-year-old. But the mindset is totally changed. I think if I had heard this album at age 12 when I was getting into rock, I would love this album. But because I was already 14, almost 15 when they even released the album, and it was my pull towards the album based on the Motley Crue cover, or what I hoped was the Motley Crue cover, I think that it was just a little too late. And so, it's adequate. It's adequate for a rock album from that era. It's just really nothing other than the cover tune stands out. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not sure it stands out had the original been available all those years. I think the novelty of getting to hear that tune for the first time, you know, had me holding on to this album a lot higher, holding this album a lot higher regard than maybe what it deserves to be. You could make an argument for it being a 5, but for me, I think if I'm being totally honest, and as I sit here today as the aging metalhead teen that I am, that's where it's going to be. It's going to be a 4. All right, guys, so there you have it. We just got done reviewing Pretty Boy Floyd's effort of Leather Boyz with Electric Toyz. I'm really interested to see how many people are going to go against the grain on me on this one. Let me know. Did I get it totally wrong? Do I have a point here? I need the like, the comment, the subscription, and the comments. I need all of that to let me know how far off base I was on this one. Like I said, it was a totally different review if I'd have done this back in 1989 probably, but we're not in 1989. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's others you want reviewed, and I'll be happy to track them down and do it. So thanks for tuning in to Larry on Eric and Darrell.